Who's the boss? Princess Charlotte.
She's a very hard-working royalist who actually, in herself, seems to stay out the limelight quite a lot.
She's incredibly hard-working.
Princess Royal has been known to some as her royal rudeness, but she's also been called the monarchy's trustiest anchor over the years.
The royal family was rocked by a scandal that almost destroyed an innocent child's future. What started as a simple family event quickly turned into something dark when Anne found proof that someone was trying to set Charlotte up. The trap was so carefully hidden that even William and Catherine didn't know their daughter was at risk.
Prince William and Kate Middleton's little girl is all grown up. Princess Charlotte, the only daughter of the Prince and Princess of Wales, turns 10 years old on May 2nd.
But Anne's instincts kicked in, and what she did next brought her to tears and changed everything. Let's get into the full story and see how it all unfolded. The perfect storm that almost destroyed everything. Princess Charlotte's first major public appearance was supposed to be a dream come true. The palace had chosen her to represent the royal family at a special children's charity event in London. It was meant to be a gentle introduction to royal duties, a chance for the young princess to show her natural warmth and charm to the world. The event seemed perfect. A small gathering of children, some flowers to present, and a few kind words to share. What could possibly go wrong? Princess Anne had been watching the preparations for weeks, and something didn't feel right. She noticed small things at first. Staff members acting nervous around her, whispered conversations that stopped when she walked into rooms, and changes to the event schedule that nobody could properly explain. Anne had spent decades in royal service, and she knew the difference between normal pre-event nerves and something more sinister. The signs were all there, but she needed proof before she could act. The investigation began when Anne overheard two event coordinators discussing Charlotte's appearance. They were talking about making sure she would never forget this day. At first, Anne thought they meant it in a positive way, like creating beautiful memories for a young girl. But as she listened closer, she realized they meant something much darker and more twisted. Anne decided to dig deeper into the event planning. She started asking innocent questions, checking details that most people wouldn't think twice about. What she found made her blood run cold. It was a carefully planned attack on a child's confidence and future. Someone had spent months setting up what looked like a normal royal engagement, but was actually designed to humiliate Princess Charlotte in front of the entire world. The setup was so detailed and so cruel that Anne couldn't believe what she was seeing. Every single aspect of the event had been changed to create maximum embarrassment for Charlotte. The dress had been secretly altered to be too long, making it almost certain she would trip while walking up the steps. The flowers she was supposed to present were arranged in heavy, awkward bouquets that would be difficult for small hands to manage. Even the microphone had been adjusted to a setting that would make her young voice sound weak and uncertain. The most shocking discovery was yet to come, and it would bring Anne to tears. Hidden in the event coordinator's files, Anne found the real agenda. Charlotte was supposed to give a short speech to the children, but the words had been completely changed without anyone in the royal family knowing. The new speech was filled with difficult words that no 9-year-old should be expected to pronounce correctly. If Charlotte stumbled over these words, photographers would capture every moment of her confusion and embarrassment. But the cruelest part was the photographers themselves. They had been given specific instructions about which angles to shoot from, what moments to focus on, and how to make Charlotte look as small and overwhelmed as possible. The goal was to create lasting images that would follow her for the rest of her life. Pictures that would make people question whether she was ready for royal duties, whether she was strong enough to handle the pressure, and whether the royal family was making a mistake by putting her in the spotlight. The moment Anne's heart broke. When Anne realized the full scope of what was planned, she locked herself in her private office and cried. These were tears of heartbreak for an innocent child who had no idea what was coming. Anne had faced many challenges in her royal career.
Princess Anne, is so refreshing. She is straight talking. She is the hardest working royal last year and for many, many years.
But nothing had prepared her for the cruelty of adults targeting a 9-year-old girl. She thought about Charlotte's excitement over the past few weeks. The young princess had been practicing her speech, choosing her favorite dress, and talking about how proud she was to represent the family. Charlotte had no idea that people she trusted were planning to humiliate her in front of the world. The charity event was scheduled for the next day, and Anne had less than 24 hours to stop a plan that had been months in the making. She couldn't go to William and Catherine, who were away on an official overseas trip, and wouldn't be back in time. She couldn't involve King Charles because that would create too much attention and possibly tip off the conspirators. Anne realized she would have to handle this alone, just like she had handled so many other family crises over the years. Anne had watched too many young royals get crushed by the weight of public expectation and media cruelty. She wasn't about to let it happen to Charlotte, not on her watch. The first thing Anne did was call an emergency meeting with the event coordinators. She didn't reveal what she knew. Instead, she acted like she was just doing a routine check of the arrangements. But her trained eye caught every detail that had been changed, every trap that had been set. The coordinators tried to explain away the changes as improvements or updates, but Anne could see right through their lies. What happened next would test every relationship Anne had built over decades of royal service. As Anne dug deeper into who was behind the plot, she discovered something that shocked her even more than the plan itself. The sabotage was coming from inside the royal household. People who had sworn loyalty to the family, who had been trusted with the most intimate details of their lives, were the ones planning to destroy a child's confidence. Anne found evidence that suggested the plot had approval from someone much higher up the royal hierarchy. Someone who should have been protecting Charlotte was actually the one ordering her downfall. The evidence pointed to a conspiracy that reached into the very heart of the royal family, involving people Anne had known and trusted for years. The attack on Charlotte was calculated to remove a bright, confident young princess who represented hope and renewal. The conspirators saw Charlotte as a threat to their own influence and position, and they were willing to destroy a child's life to protect their own interests. The pressure was enormous. Anne knew that if she moved too quickly or too openly, the conspirators would simply postpone their plan and try again later. But if she waited too long, Charlotte would walk into their trap and suffer consequences that could last a lifetime. Anne had to find a way to stop the plot without revealing how much she knew, while also protecting Charlotte from future attacks. Time was running out, and Anne could feel the weight of responsibility crushing down on her shoulders. She had always been the royal family's protector, the one who handled crises quietly and efficiently. But this time the stakes were higher than ever before. The night that changed everything. The night before the charity event, Anne made a decision that would change everything. She couldn't stop the event entirely without raising suspicions, but she could make sure Charlotte was protected from the worst of the traps that had been set. Anne spent the entire night working behind the scenes, quietly undoing months of careful sabotage. First, she dealt with Charlotte's dress. Anne had a trusted seamstress come to the palace in secret to fix the alterations that had been made. The dress was returned to its proper length, and extra safety measures were added to make sure Charlotte could walk confidently without any risk of tripping. Anne also arranged for Charlotte to have a private dress rehearsal, giving her a chance to practice walking in the outfit and building her confidence. Next, Anne tackled the speech problem. She couldn't change the words without alerting the conspirators, but she could make sure Charlotte was prepared for what was coming. Anne spent hours with Charlotte, helping her practice the difficult words and giving her tricks for handling any parts she might struggle with. She made it seem like extra preparation, not emergency damage control. Anne knew she had to deal with the photographers and the media coverage directly. She used her decades of experience and her network of contacts to quietly influence how the event would be covered. She arranged for friendly photographer to be in key positions, making sure that even if Charlotte struggled, the images captured would be kind and supportive, rather than cruel and embarrassing. The microphone situation required the most delicate handling, and couldn't simply change the settings without the sound technicians noticing, so she arranged for a backup system to be in place. If Charlotte's voice was being deliberately undermined, Anne's team would be ready to fix the problem instantly. But even with all these preparations, Anne knew she couldn't protect Charlotte from everything. The conspirators had planned their attack carefully, and there were probably traps Anne hadn't discovered yet. She would have to stay alert throughout the entire event, ready to intervene if anything went wrong. The morning of the event brought new challenges that tested Anne's resolve. The morning of the charity event arrived with beautiful sunshine, but Anne felt nothing but dread. She had spent the night making preparations, but she knew the conspirators would be watching for any signs that their plan had been discovered. Anne had to act completely normal while staying ready to protect Charlotte at a moment's notice. Charlotte arrived at the palace early, excited and nervous about her big day. Anne's heart broke as she watched the young princess practice her speech one more time, completely unaware of the battle being fought around her. Charlotte's innocence and trust made Anne even more determined to protect her, no matter what the cost. As the time approached for leaving the palace, Anne noticed increased tension among the staff. The conspirators were clearly nervous, probably wondering if their plan would work as intended. Anne caught several meaningful glances between the event coordinators and realized they were communicating in some kind of code. She made a mental note to pay extra attention to their movements throughout the day of reckoning. Anne rode with Charlotte and her security team, maintaining casual conversation while her mind raced through all the possible scenarios. She had contingency plans for the most obvious traps, but she knew the conspirators were clever and might have surprises waiting. Anne found herself studying Charlotte's face, memorizing her excitement and confidence, praying that the day wouldn't destroy the light in her eyes. When they arrived at the venue, Anne immediately noticed that some of the arrangements had been changed again. The stage setup was different from what she had seen in the planning documents, and there were unfamiliar faces among the photography crew. Anne realized the conspirators had made last-minute adjustments, probably trying to counter any interference they suspected. Then the first trap was sprung, and Anne's worst fears began to come true. As Charlotte walked onto the stage, Anne immediately saw that something was wrong. The lighting had been adjusted to cast harsh shadows across Charlotte's face, making her look much younger and more vulnerable than she actually was. The photographers were positioned exactly where Anne had expected them to be, ready to capture unflattering angles. But Charlotte handled the lighting change beautifully, instinctively adjusting her posture and smile to work with the conditions. Anne felt a surge of pride watching her great niece show such natural poise under pressure. The young princess had inherited the family's ability to adapt and overcome, even when she didn't realize she was being tested. The flower presentation went smoothly, thanks to Anne's behind-the-scenes work. Charlotte managed the heavy bouquets with grace, and her natural warmth shone through as she interacted with the children. Anne could see some of the photographers looking frustrated as they weren't getting the embarrassing shots they had been promised. Anne held her breath as Charlotte began to speak. The microphone settings had been adjusted as planned, making Charlotte's voice sound thin and uncertain. But Anne's backup plan kicked in immediately. Her trusted sound technician made a quick adjustment that restored Charlotte's voice to its proper level. The change was so smooth that most people didn't even notice it had happened. Charlotte began working through the difficult words that had been inserted into her speech. Anne watched with pride as her great niece used the techniques they had practiced, taking her time with challenging pronunciations and staying calm when she encountered unfamiliar phrases. Instead of stumbling and looking foolish, Charlotte showed remarkable composure for someone her age. The conspirators' plan was falling apart before their eyes. Instead of creating embarrassing moments, they were inadvertently showcasing Charlotte's natural talent and resilience. Anne could see the frustration on their faces as their carefully laid trap failed to catch its intended victim. As the event concluded successfully, Anne felt a mixture of relief and anger. Relief that Charlotte had been protected from the worst of the attack, but anger that such an attack had been attempted at all. The young princess had handled herself beautifully, showing grace under pressure that would have impressed seasoned royals. But Anne's work wasn't finished. She knew that if she didn't deal with the conspirators directly, they would simply try again with a different approach. Anne had to send a message that would protect not just Charlotte, but all the younger royals who might be targeted in the future. The final confrontation. After Charlotte left the venue, Anne arranged to meet with the key conspirators privately. She didn't want to create a scene or generate publicity, but she needed to make sure they understood the consequences of their actions. Anne had evidence of their plot, and she was prepared to use it if necessary. Anne didn't raise her voice or make threats. Instead, she simply presented the evidence she had gathered and asked for an explanation. The conspirators tried to deny their involvement at first, but Anne's documentation was too thorough to argue with. She had records of their meetings, copies of their communications, and proof of the changes they had made to the event planning. When faced with undeniable evidence, the conspirators finally admitted their plan. Their justification was that they were trying to protect the monarchy from what they saw as dangerous changes. They believed that Charlotte and the younger royals represented a threat to traditional values and established hierarchies within the royal household. Anne listened to their explanations with growing disgust. These people had been willing to destroy a child's confidence and possibly her entire future, all because they disagreed with the direction the royal family was taking. Their selfishness and cruelty went beyond anything Anne had encountered in her decades of royal service. Anne's response would make sure nothing like this ever happened again. Anne's decision about how to handle the conspirators was perhaps the most difficult choice she had ever made. She could have exposed them publicly, creating a scandal that would have destroyed their careers, and possibly led to criminal charges. But she also knew that a public scandal would inevitably involve Charlotte, subjecting her to exactly the kind of negative attention the plot had been designed to create. Instead, Anne chose a different path. She arranged for the conspirators to be quietly removed from positions where they could harm the royal family. They were transferred to other roles, far from any involvement in royal events or access to sensitive information. Anne also made sure that their actions were documented in confidential files, ensuring that they would never again be trusted with important responsibilities. But Anne's protection of Charlotte came at a personal cost. The stress of the investigation and the confrontation had taken a toll on her health and her relationships within the royal household. Some people viewed her actions as overreaction, while others questioned whether she had handled the situation properly. Anne found herself more isolated than ever, carrying the burden of knowledge about the conspiracy while being unable to share the full truth. The relationship between Anne and the rest of the royal family also changed. While Charlotte remained blissfully unaware of what had happened, Anne found it difficult to interact normally with people who might have been involved in the plot. Trust, once broken, was extremely difficult to rebuild, and Anne struggled with paranoia about who could be trusted with the family's safety. Months after the charity event, Anne reflected on what had happened and what it meant for the future of the royal family. Charlotte had emerged from the experience stronger and more confident, completely unaware of the danger she had faced. But Anne also realized that her role as protector would never end. The royal family would always face threats from people who wanted to use them for their own purposes, and someone would always need to stand guard against those threats. Princess Anne's tears that day were from the realization that even innocent children weren't safe from the cruel games of adult ambition. Her quiet heroism saved Princess Charlotte from a trap that could have destroyed her confidence forever, but it also revealed the dark side of royal life that most people never see. What do you think about Anne's decision to handle this crisis in secret? And should the public know more about the dangers that royal children face behind palace walls? Share your thoughts in the comments below.